Welcome to another episode in our series, 100 Years at the Library, which looks at the history of the Frick Art Reference Library through some of the fascinating objects in our collections. Among the first books purchased by Helen Clay Frick when she founded the library in 1920 were catalogs of private art collections. Today, the library's holdings include more than 1,600 of these catalogs, dating from the 17th century to the present. They take all shapes and formats, from lavish multi-volume illustrated catalogs to contemporary monographs to small booklets meant to be carried in your hand while visiting a collector's home. In this episode, I'm highlighting an example of one of these private collection booklets, a rare copy of Mrs. Mary Morgan's collection of paintings, New York, 1884. Mary Jane Morgan became one of New York City's wealthiest women when her husband, the shipping and railroad magnate Charles Morgan, died in 1878. Charles was also a distant cousin of J.P. Morgan, the famous financier and art collector. Mary would fill her Madison Square Park home with European and American paintings, Asian, European, and American decorative arts, and old master and contemporary prints that spanned 4 centuries and 2 continents, including a set of 110 prints by Rembrandt. Her home also featured a skylit gallery, an extensive art library, custom-built furnishings, and a greenhouse for her prize-winning orchid collection. In 1884, Morgan commissioned this catalog of paintings to serve as a guide for those visiting her private galleries. The catalog indicates where each of the pictures were hanging in her home. Each painting is numbered 1 through 207, suggesting an order to follow while exploring her collection, reminiscent of the Frick's modern-day printed guide. The catalog gives us valuable insights into Morgan's taste for art and her methods of display, serving as a time capsule of her collection and a glimpse into her unique aesthetic. Though rare in 1884, it would become common practice for future New York City collectors to create guides to their private galleries. In 1916, 3 decades after Morgan, Henry Clay Frick, founder of the Frick Collection, printed a guide to his paintings collection. One distinctive feature of this catalog shows how Mary Jane Morgan set out to make her mark as a collector. The letters embossed on the cover, MJM, were not just her initials, but helped establish her brand. This collector's mark was also incorporated into the design of silver pieces she commissioned and was stamped in blue ink on the back of her most cherished prints. Though Morgan was widely covered in the press during her lifetime, she is best known for the record-setting auction of her collection, which took place in March of 1886, just 9 months after her passing. She died without a will, and at the direction of her heirs, most notably her sister, Emily Moir, Morgan's collection was sold through the firm of the American Art Association, with the auctioneer Thomas Kirby at the helm. Kirby appraised the collection for Emily, and it is because of him that we find this gem in our collection, as an heir of his donated it to us, along with other materials from the American Art Association in the 1950s. Morgan's 1886 auction took place over 13 days and reaped approximately $1.2 million, setting a personal best for the firm and an auction record that would not be beaten in the United States for another 24 years. The most prominent 19th century collectors attended to compete for her treasures. Their exploits went viral. They were reported daily in newspapers across the United States and Europe. Morgan and her collecting practices foreshadow those of Henry Clay Frick, who was beginning his journey as a collector at the time of her sale. He would later burnish his own mark, HCF, in the gates of his New York City home. Additionally, Frick's early purchases were of paintings by the same artists indexed in Morgan's catalog. He would later focus his efforts on the old masters and fulfill what is thought to have been Morgan's ultimate desire: to form an art museum of her own. Mary Jane Morgan would have undoubtedly found herself at home within the walls of the Frick Collection galleries and our library's reading room. Thanks to the library's collection, which preserves perhaps the only surviving copy of her visitor guide, we can be transported back to Mary Jane Morgan's remarkable collection and home, a New York City treasure from over 130 years ago.